Hi everyone, and good afternoon. I'm Tim Richards, Technical Services Manager of the Managing General Agents Association, and on behalf of the MGAA, I'd like to welcome you to our briefing this afternoon. This is being delivered by Matt Unsworth, Transformation Director, Market and Operation at Lloyd's, with a Blueprint 2 update. I'd just like to run through a couple of housekeeping points. Please ensure your microphone and camera are turned off. If you'd like to ask a question, for those online, feel free to use the chat button at the bottom of your screen. And for those in the room, please do ask all your Blueprint 2 questions to make this briefing as interactive as possible. The briefing is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be issued post-event together with the slides and our feedback survey. Please take the time to complete our survey. It takes no longer than 2 minutes and allows us to deliver the best possible future events to our members. So we'll kick straight off if we may. So enjoy the briefing, everyone. And Matt, over to you.
Thank you very much, Tim. So first of all, I'll start with an apology. I'm sure we're going to cover a bit of ground on items that you already know, but every time we do a briefing, we're never quite sure where everyone's sort of level of understanding is. So we'll probably just cover a few areas just to baseline everyone's sort of position. Jamie Coughlin from the Blueprint 2 is here with me. Some of you may have met Jamie before. Among other things, Jamie sort of sits at the cross section a lot of the activity we do in the DA and cover holder space. So is a great reference point, and I'm sure we'll be able to contribute to any questions that you've got. So if we just start, I'm just going to cancel a couple of slides, and Tim will send these to you after the session, so you've all got a reference. So just to really recap, really. So Blueprint 2 is a concept. It's been around quite some time. It has evolved since its inception. Some of you will remember, probably were in the room where Bruce Carnegie-Brown kind of introduced it. I think it was 2019 or 2020. There are lots of parts of Blueprint 2. Some of those things sort of sit in the Blueprint 2 program as we discuss it and we understand it today. Others about access to capital, new entrants to the market, starting up syndicates. All those ideas have sort of come and gone. Some of those are live. Some of those are being used day to day. You've got your fantastic initiatives like London Bridge as an example. Things like Syndicate in a Box. So there's a lot to Blueprint 2. But when we talk about Blueprint 2 today, we really talk about the part of the program which sort of got down to brass tacks in terms of modernisation of some of the core elements and the core infrastructure of the program of work. So when we describe it now, we talk about Blueprint 2 in 2 phases. The first phase, very simplistically, is a move of the market's core technology backbone. So central and shared services supplied legacy form by XIS, now supplied by Biometric. Lots of those services and systems sit in outdated mainframe environments. So that when we talk about phase 1, we're talking about those services, the primary objective, lifting those services out of their mainframe environment into a new cloud environment, plus the provision of a whole new set of technology and the sunsetting of over 100 legacy applications. For you and for firms individually, it's different, dependent on your operating model, your size, where you operate in the market. For some firms and some of our stakeholders, that's a very, very straightforward what we're trying to do in phase 1. For others, it's actually quite complex. But we should all be clear, it is an utterly massive step for the market, and one that, in itself creates value, but really enables us in the future, where we talk about how we can evolve and modernize services from where we are now with a set of mainframe applications that have been in place for a long time, where we are over dependent on manual process. It's really, really difficult, near impossible to evolve some of those areas. So once we've refreshed that backbone, we've moved it into a cloud environment, our ability to evolve digitally is completely changed from where it is today. So that's our target for the summer. And then our phase 2 application, our phase 2 deliverable, which is slated for April next year, essentially that's when the market has an opportunity to digitize its interaction with those services. So for phase 1, we're still working down the message pipelines, albeit we have to make some changes to those. In phase 2, that's where we sort of really start to make significant changes. Submission of CDR, so actually moving to a data-first environment using the Biometric gateway in a completely different way, and a whole new set of services processes that we can evolve and we can change. So it's the second phase of the program, I think, which has the most meaningful impact on the market. Phase 1 we're doing is a single market cutover. It really only will work that way. It's actually it may not sound it. It's actually the simplest, lowest risk way of doing phase 1. Phase 2, we will make capability available, and it will be down to you to sort of choose what's right for your firm on what pace that you think those things should be picked up at. So if we just click on that, sure. I just wanted to sort of just a little bit just to talk about Valanetic. I regularly get questions about what is and who is Valanetic. So I don't assume that everyone has a very clear understanding of that. So Valanetic basically is XIS as was, which then morphed into the London Market joint venture, which is an ownership structure between Lloyd's, DXC, and the IUI. And Valanetic is the brand, new brand name that they launched last year. I mean, in terms of what they do for the market, I mean, they are absolutely spine of essential services. And you can sort of see, I put a few numbers up here, you know, over 100 billion of premium, 100 billion of premium claims that flow through the market, over 200 million transactions, you know, absolutely essential to the way the market flows. And when we talk about technology change, we talk about process change, we are focusing on the services that drive these areas. That is what our Blueprint 2 phase 1 is looking at. Actually, the areas of most contact, actually the areas which are shared and are very, very broadly utilised across the market. So in phase 1, I mean, it's our messaging on phase 1 hasn't really changed for a while. But I mean, one thing I will say, I mean, the deliverable is not far away now. We are sort of into a point now where our own testing is well underway. We'll shortly be commencing market testing. We just wanted to re-emphasize the point. I'm not sure we can say enough in terms of like what we are going to put live. There is no possibility that we'll put something live that isn't ready. There's no possibility that we'll put something live, you know, that hasn't been rigorously tested by ourselves in the market. I think the level of focus and level of engagement in the program is higher than it's ever been. And I think what that does, it brings to life the sort of scale of and the complexity of what we're trying to do. And then for your own firms, there'll be different sort of journeys that you've got to go on. It is a single event. Everyone's going to cut over a single period. It's not like a single day cut over. The cut over period, which will happen in the summer, actually spans over a couple of weeks, where we very simplistically slow the flow of transactions down. Then we do the technical cut over. Then we speed the flow of transactions back up, just so we can ensure that everything has gone smoothly. That process will probably take around 2 weeks. There will, in the middle of that, be a period of time where we actually have to have a genuine blackout where we can't process transactions. That's kind of standard for doing these types of things across the market. Obviously, something of this size, it's a little bit more involved. Your interface, and it really depends like what your firm does. I mean, I'm certain there'll be people on the call who are not currently utilising any essential services. So actually, this is an interesting story, but it won't touch you. But if you are utilising any essential services, you'll see that there are over 100 legacy apps that are being sunsetted, where most of the new technology is being utilised through 2 new portals: IPOS, our premiums portal, and IPOS, our claims portal. If you are familiar with essential services and the tools, you'll be looking at the moment a lot of green screens, a lot of different technology. What you'll see with the new technology launches is just a complete night and day in terms of how they run and what they do and how they do it. I mean, a completely different experience. But where we are, where phase 1 lands and where it sort of sits, is that there are changes across messaging infrastructure. So how your firm or your vendor, I don't know what your operating model does, interfaces with Valanetic and central services, there will be changes there. I'm certain if you're using the central services somewhere in your organisation, you'll have people's roles impacted. So processes, you know, someone over there, a team over there may have operated in a particular way, and now they've got new portals and new tools. Fundamentally, they're doing the same stuff, but actually processes will be impacted. We view that as a very positive output. If you flick onto the next slide, Tim, to just give it a sense of like how we're trying to like what it means for firms in the market. Obviously, there's a pretty large testing element to it. Testing is a new technology, confirming that it's ready to go is on us. You in the market, any firm in the market is welcome to test any element of it, but the actual assurance that the technology is ready to go sits with us. And then in terms of market testing, what firms are going to focus on are the scenarios and the areas which are relevant to them. For some firms who operate sort of quite fairly diverse portfolios across different parts of the market, there's a fairly broad church of things that need testing. For other firms, there's just a very small amount of scenarios they want to look at. For some of the smaller firms, actually, they may be comfortable looking at what's been done elsewhere and saying, yeah, we're okay with that. It's been tested thoroughly. But the combined effort between what the program, what Valanetic, and what sort of market participants are doing, it does amount to just a really enormous amount of testing. Messaging is changing. So actually for this phase, message structures are remaining the same, but it's a sort of origination and destination messages. So you've almost got to unhook one pipe, rehook another one, and is what needs to be done here. If you're sort of in control of your own technology state, that's something that your own tech people would need to cover. If you've got vendors running that for you, obviously it's something that your vendors would cover. We have a brilliant engagement with the vendor community. We have over 160 vendors actually we talk with regularly. There's about 30 of those, give or take, that actually interface and work with the central services on a regular basis. This is those 30 or so that we're working with. And there's there's an enormous amount of engagement there. And then in terms of process, in terms of changes, obviously there's an enormous amount of training that needs to get done. So that will be supplied from the program. So we've got different training options. So if you're of a mind, we've got some beautiful manuals that you can fastidiously work through, sort of page by page. We've got online content. We can provision something specific to your needs if you want to do that as well. So we've got some of our bigger brokers who have got like offshore centres, sort of more focused on could we do like trainer type training, and then they can take that information and sort of dissipate around our firms. More smaller than the market firms looking at something, can we do something in person? Can you train our subject matter experts here, and everything in between as we can support? And then the final part, and sort of this is a call out. So if you are working with the central services, your firm has connectivity with them, there will be some contractual changes. We'll be sunsetting the contracts that govern the current services from Valenetic and moving on to a new agreement we refer to as the DPSI. There's sort of two elements of that really. One is like understanding all the content of the DPSA, and the second is actually a point where you sign termination, and you're ready to move from the old to the new document. I would sort of say two things. If you're using the central services now, I dare say you're really engaged with that process and very familiar with it. If not, and you're using those central services and you haven't had that connectivity with Valenetic, feel free to reach out to Jamie or myself, and we can connect you with the right people in Valenetic to make sure that we've got sort of legal team at your end and at our end connected, make sure we've got all the contractual sort of tied off. And if you want to move on to. So in terms of bringing it to life for the MGA and cover holder market, and Jamie and I were just chatting on the way over here, we supplied, I think, a bit of a newsletter update into the group. At the moment, there is not a huge change for MGAs and cover holders. So depending on where you sit, you may see that as a huge relief. You may see that as an opportunity miss, but it is when you take a step back from what we're doing, the scale and the complexity of it really is huge. I mean, it is such a significant program of work. We have to break it down into logical chunks. We have to break it down into some semblance of priority. The first item is getting that Valenetic technology stack moved forward. That's what we're aiming for in the summer. And then April next year, we launch our phase 2, and then those services will iterate from there. So what we've done from a DA perspective is we've tried to keep things as closely to as they are as possible, but move them into the new technology stack. So process-wise, you won't see considerable changes at this time. Most of the opportunity for the DA space, I think, sits in that phase 2 camp. So around data standards, around settlement. I think an observation again, Jamie and I were just chatting on the way over. I think there's been some really significant efforts to look at the cover holder space across the London market. I think what those things perhaps haven't done is they've looked at individual facets of how the space works. What they haven't been done is sort of all-encompassing and holistic and looked at things end-to-end. Through my own background of working on carrier and broker and MGSI, it can be a reasonably convoluted and complex flow between client and MGA, client and carrier with MGA in the middle of it. That complexity adds steps in the chain. So there's still a really significant dependency on bordereaux. Bordereaux is fantastic tool, not great necessarily if you want to talk about data accuracy, insight. That probably wasn't where the journey on those types of solutions started. So I think for us, we are going to start some work later this year about data standards on DA. It's our commitment to you that you will certainly get the opportunity to contribute to that. We don't view that as something where we can give you an answer and sort of go from there. I think what we need to do is provide some baselines and some thinking, and we can iterate a discussion from there. And then when we move into solutionizing like what would work for cover holder and DA, the cover holder DA space in phase 2, we've got lots of ideas. Some of those I don't think probably will survive the cutting table. Others, I think, are worthy of it. And then I think when we get into that discussion, it's where we really take a look at what you consider to be the priorities for us, and we'll be guided by what we think, you think for your clients and for your firms is the right way of pushing it forward. But I will just emphasise, just in terms of where we are now, if you use those central services and you're feeling in any way that you're kind of out of the loop, not connected to the programme, just call out to us. We've got a whole team of engagement partners who will be able to sort of break it down and sort of link in with your firm in any way that's required. And then sort of final slide for us was just to, and don't forget you need to sort of note this down, this can go out and pack after. There is a real goldmine of useful information on the Blueprint 2 Dianetic website. There's a whole piece around user journeys, testing approach, a great piece on adoption guide. That adoption guide is actually just going to be iterated in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and will include sort of a nice breakdown of the DA space and everything that we put in there. There's training, there's brokers, there's a specific carrier side to it, there's a training side to it. I would encourage you, if you haven't looked through that, really push it through. And perhaps one of the most useful places to start is to get that adoption guide in the middle of the table. Get a combination of people in your firm in there, get some tech people, some operations people, some placement, underwriting, wherever it might be, and actually just sort of break that down. And it brings to life the adoption journey for sort of phase 1 through the lens of several different disciplines within the firm, and you can kind of get a pretty decent view of where the impacts would be on your firm. But there's some great information in there. And as I say, Jamie and I will be more than happy to take any questions from you. And if we don't know the answer, we'll be able to navigate that into Dianetic or into the programme. So those are the slides that I was going to run through in a sort of quick 50,000 foot. Apologies if some of that or most of that you've heard before. Maybe throw it open to questions, and happy to take any comments.
Quick question on, I was really interested in what you were saying on the phase two bit of does that baseline there put in the data standards to allow the removal of board rate and go straight through processing?
No, not as part of phase 2. I think those problems should be separated, I suppose, really. I think it could enable us to move forward to remove the board role, but I think that there's a lot more hurdles that need to be cleared with that from a technology perspective, from an underlying data perspective. I think the most important kind of point on that previous slide, and it was in the newsletter too, is the Accord standards do not account for data. So cover holder B5.2 is the only data standard. If it's a data standard, it's more of a data dictionary. It is the only thing in play, and that will still be the case in April next year. There is work, as Matt said, that will kick off later this year to update the Accord standards. You know, there's a roadmap, there's a timeline. We're not talking about, 2025 before we update a full new data standards. That will have to be rolled out accordingly and signed off. To give you an idea, the CDR for open market took in the range of 2 to 3 years for full agreement and rollout.
And if you think about the evolution of that open market data standard, your point is a really good one, and the answer to your questions is not obvious. Yes, like could you develop a data standard which actually facilitated straight through processing? It would be quite complex, but the answer is yes, you could. But the experience that we've had from the data standard work that we've done thus far is that that's only part of it. What you have to do is plot a journey that's adoptable, and actually there's a whole lot of operational, technological, and commercial considerations which have got to go alongside actually the emergence of the data standard. I mean, we would probably sit in the camp of going, we would love to do that in the quickest possible timescale, wouldn't we? But we have to be realistic in terms of creating a journey for the market which is adoptable.
I think, if I may, Matt, I'll just revisit some questions which were asked last time with Bob James.
Sure.
We went back to last October. So I thought it would be interesting just to revisit those, just see where we are with those various points. So one question that was asked was, what can we do to increase stakeholder engagement? Something you've touched on already, particularly with cover holders.
Sure. I think the topic of stakeholder engagement over the last 6 months has just increased, multiples from where it was. So actually, I think there's a combination of factors from that the key milestones that the program's working towards are just that bit closer. But the engagement right across the market now is fantastic. We've got dedicated teams both at Lloyd's and at Dianetic of engagement partners that are working very, very closely with a very big community of people across the market. So there's lots of activity in there, of course, and obviously speaking, that's had to focus on the milestones that are coming up, so our phase one deliverable. I think from a cover holder perspective, as we're getting later in the day, as we're sort of delivering our phase one piece, the interesting discussion is on phase two, and our plan is to increase what we're doing, not just with the cover holder community, but with the rest of the market around what phase two means. There is optionality in phase two. You know, there isn't necessarily one journey on it. We will be putting capability live, and how that gets picked up and how that gets utilized will be slightly different and slightly nuanced for everyone. So we want to make sure that we're doing that in a very inclusive way, and slightly different from phase one as well, because the key deliverable for that phase is sort of internal technology development. A lot of that work and a lot of that thinking has been done by that team. For phase two, it's almost the complete opposite. Really, it has to be guided by what the market needs, what the market feels would be valuable and impactful for clients. And we've got a whole different set of priorities, and we've got options on how we deploy things. So I think by its very definition, phase two has to be one that is done on an engagement basis. I think we are communication engagement, sort of the linchpin of everything that we're doing. I mean, as much as we do, we always feel like we should do more. It's probably the answer to it. So I think as we get phase one in the rearview mirror and we complete that milestone, I think you'll see engagement on phase two, how we may implement, what should be included with the cover holder community will sort of really strengthen from there.
I think as we touched on before we actually started the recording, but I think it'd be really useful to maybe come back if it's all within 6 months' time, just to update them. Fantastic. Okay. Another question that was asked last time was, and I've already got an answer from Bob on this, but whether cover holders will get an opportunity to input on CDR. So Bob replied yes last October. Just leading on from that, though, Bob believes that 80 to 90% of the standards are the same between open market and cover holder business. So I'm not sure if you still feel that's the same. And just going on from that, the final version won't go to Accord before going through a market consultation process, which I assume is the same. And the aim is the third quarter of 24 moving into 25. So yeah, just whether that's
sure
also the same.
I mean, I'll defer to Jamie and let him provide some flavour on this because he's already touched on it. But the answer is absolutely yes. That you know the DA data standard, that CDR, is part of our journey. Yes, our intention is we begin that work in 2024 and we actually start to produce a baseline, which then goes to consultation. I think probably from there, Jamie, let me hand over to you. There's quite an interesting sort of journey for that, isn't there?
Yeah, I think so. I think to pick up on the first point, I think, yes, there is strong alignment between the CDR and cover holders like really because the CDR covers 4 use cases: premium processing, claims matching, regulatory and tax reporting. That is also what 5.2 is built upon. There is some differences. The main difference is the fact in the delegated standard, there's 2 contracts. Contract to delegation and the contract and insurance. The CDR is only built for contract insurance. So that's where the disparity and changes would need to be made. But ultimately, the underlying information will be relatively the same. So we do think that transition, whilst still a transition, it can be managed much more safely rather than it's not a 100% new standard. So I think that's appropriate. But I think it's really important that it doesn't become a London-centered data standard, as in some ways it could do. And I think the CDR, I don't think it would be fair to say it is London-centered, but by nature, open market tends to be with brokers and carriers input. So we would need to get out. We have spoken to cover holders previously along those lines, and definitely need to extend that engagement as we develop them.
Thanks, Jamie. And just one more from last time before I'll throw it open. So we've already got a couple of questions in on the chat facility. Keep them coming, and then I'll throw it into the room once more. But last October, user stories were raised. So examples were given of user stories. Do we have updated user stories? So I think this is really talking about cover holders. And Jamie, this is something we touched on just before we started, wasn't it? So I don't think we do yet, do we?
No, and I think sometimes user stories and user journeys get kind of taken into account for each other. There is no DA development done and that's different in phase 1 that impacts the cover holder directly unless you use central services. So there's no user stories from that. As we move into phase 2 development, there may be some user stories that come out that impact the cover holder, but we're not there yet. And I think what we would look to do is engage. But at this time, no is the answer, but at the appropriate time, we will.
In that set of links that were in the back of the file there, I mean, there is a lot of user journey information up there, but it's all centered around sort of claims on open market. I mean, whilst not totally relevant to the cover holder space, I would encourage people to have a look, because what I think those do, they really bring to life some of the changes that we're making and how it impacts roles and individuals and key processes. So I think there's still value in looking at those, even though they're not explicitly described as something in the cover holder space.
And when the new adoption journey comes out, we do build upon, show where some of those can be expanded or contracted maybe from a dedicated perspective. So watch this space as that can go at the start of next quarter. It's worth reading through. And if anybody has any questions, as always, please pass our contacts. We're happy to have conversations on them. If you like questions.
Sure. Okay, and so yeah, we've got one in on the chat facility from someone listening in, which is someone that says that he has 3 questions. The Blueprint 2 site has engagement parties for brokers and carriers, but as MGAs, there is no designated point of contact for the project. Is there a route that we should be following, or a particular person who we should be reaching out to?
Yeah, so I suppose just to kind of cover off that, the reason that there hasn't been an MGA point of contact is because we feel that there is limited impact on MGAs and cover holders. Clearly, that's not always the case. So please use myself as a designated point of contact, and I can point you towards the right engagement partner. We can put my email in the chat, and then you can find any communications we send out afterwards. But please reach out to me. Or just there's a direct email inbox which we can also share that will get directly to you.
Sure, and I can always pass queries on if you email me.
Yeah,
So it's
absolutely.
tim.richards@mgaa.co.uk. So the second part of the question is, you've mentioned that the process workers focus on the carriers and brokers who directly use the central services. We do not, but we do use 9,000 number facilities that engage with this at one remove. Is this included in testing? If so, which cycle is this in, and how would we be involved in this?
Some of the DA specific stuff, which will include consortium 9,000 numbers, will be in cycle 3. My best suggestion is obviously reach out, because it's the same person and we can point you in the right direction. But as you are one removed, it would probably best to be coordinated that by your carrier or by your broker, whoever is fully interlinked with that service, and they can point you in the right direction and involve you. I suppose we're kind of dealing with those that are fully interlinked rather than 1 or 2 or 3. But if you do want to be involved, then reach out and you can join.
And when Jamie talks about cycle 3, in essence, all of the functionality of the technology is deployed into our testing phase across 4 cycles. So the first 2 are sort of foundational capability, and then 3 or 4 you get some more specific stuff like consortia and sort of London market capability. So it's just the logical sequencing of how the functionality drops into the testing phase across 4 specific cycles.
Yeah.
And the final part of the question, then I'll throw it open to people in the room. So do have your questions ready. Then downstream of that underwriting, we receive reports of USM, SCM transactions that are processed under our 9,000 number facilities. And this is a critical part of our business process. Will we continue to receive these, and where is this included in the testing?
So yeah, so reporting is also part of testing. I would refer you towards the Bell&Epic testing framework if it directly impacts you. And again, we can probably share a link that was uploaded yesterday to the Bell&Epic Blueprint 2 website. I couldn't answer off the top of my head exactly which cycle reporting fits into, but it is definitely covered across the piece. And so again, it's similar to the answer above, reaching out to those that are directly involved in the testing and ensure that we feel you've got that level of coverage. But everything that is done today will operate as it does from phase 1 go live. So if you get reports of USMs and SCMs, you will continue to get that. So I think that's an important note.
Thanks, Jamie. Okay, questions in the room, anyone?
So are the fees for services from Bell&Epic and things from the back of moving into from the product processes?
Sure. So the sunsetting of the old contract for services and the move into the new contract for services does come with a different rate card. That rate card isn't as simple as sort of just going something used to be 1 and now it's 1.2. There's a whole new set of fees in terms of how fees are structured, what transactions attract fees and what don't. So actually, there's no one answer to that. So you have firms in the market who won't see a considerable amount of change. You have firms that will see discounts. You have firms that on certain transactions may see more. So yes, there is a new rate card in conjunction with the new contract. What that means is really we can only talk about that in specific to your firm.
And then when I was speaking to them about taking part in testing, and then I got something else saying something cost £15,000 or something per circle testing, which I don't think would effectively necessary for us. But with training, we talked about different levels of training and
Yeah.
people being trained. Is that going to be at a fee charged, or is there going to be certain sessions?
So we've got tiers across both testing and training. That go from we can give you a copy of testing scripts. So there are give or take about 8,000 testing scripts which we're implementing and working through inside the program. We can make any and all of those available to the market. You can test those at your own leisure and move through right through to a completely curated test service where we can produce test data for you. We can act as a counterparty. So if you wanted broker transactions in, we can fulfill that role of broker. Likewise, we can fulfill carrier transactions, and at that end, that's a fee-payable service. Same on training. So we've got lots and lots of training collateral, which is just included and available to everyone, right through to the provision of bespoke training in person for your firm, which is a chargeable service. So what we've got is really firms just choosing what's right for them. So if you're a smaller firm who actually operate models not massively impacted by this, my suggestion would be actually use the things that make available. If actually one of the large multinationals, you've got impacted users that might run into the high hundreds or low thousands, my suggestion is you might need to do some of the more evolved elements in what we're providing.
Okay, and then we'll switch to a question which has come in online, and then I'll switch back to the room. So this question is, we received a recent newsletter from a third party stating that Lloyd's will delay phase one, but have not heard this directly from Lloyd. So just wanted to see if you had anything to add on this.
Great question. I'm glad it was asked. So on Friday, there was a couple of press articles which talked about the Blueprint 2 timescales changing, and then a sort of variety of facts and information that shared that. So I guess just first to say, no, that did not originate from us. We did not issue a press release about the timeline of the program. But what we have been is very, very open over the last month that we are looking at the timeline, and that's at the market's request. So the feedback that we've received from the market at large is that there's some concerns around can we adequately complete our testing cycles for our own firm? Are we sure that the key vendors that support our alt models can be ready for us? And can we get everything through our governance and assurance frameworks, which for a lot of firms is a major outsource agreement change in the time that we've got? So all those completely reasonable questions. And we've been totally open across all our market events that we're looking at the timeline. So as things stand right now, we are not making any changes to our development delivery timescale. Validatic have not asked for, and nor have we provided extra time. All of the milestones on the program in terms of development and test completion for March and April remain unchanged, and that's our intention that the program goes into customer testing on time. There is a really valid question of, at that point, should we extend the length of time for that customer testing phase from July, so that the market's got more time to basically complete its own testing assurance and make sure its vendors are over the line. So we will confirm that ASAP, but at this point we haven't issued a specific update on it. Our position on it, by the way, it's a completely reasonable question, and we want to try and make everyone successful. So we're looking at what options we've got available to extend that timeline. But the very important nuance to it is that it doesn't change any of our internal timelines. We'll still be working to exactly the same milestones that we always have done. But actually, once the technology is in the hands of the market, what is it right? Is it appropriate? Does it help everyone's adoption journey to have a bit more time to complete that journey? Good question. And we'll confirm that, I think, probably within the next week or so.
Excellent. Do we have any other questions in the room at all? No? Okay, we'll go to one online again then. So, and do keep them coming in online. Jamie mentioned that as part of phase 2, there may be user stories journeys applicable to cover holders, but there aren't any at the moment. Delegated authority was included as a specific work stream in the Blueprint 2 plans 18 months ago. Is the plan to review delegated authority as a specific work stream during phase 2, or is it being deferred at present as a lower priority?
A couple of elements to that I will try to underpin. So yes, in Blueprint 2, delegated authority was very much part of that. But if you go back and read Blueprint 2, that was very much based around 2 systems, DCOM and DDM. And for full transparency, the world has moved forward within Lloyd's and the London market around those 2 systems over the past 18 months. DDM, for example, was going to be a mandated system for use of bordereaux, following direction from the LMA, who are the contract holders, and by a LIMOS who run the system. That decision was made not to make it a fully mandatory system for a variety of reasons that we could spend hours discussing. That caused us to need a shift into what that was. So essentially, as Blueprint 2 stands, DCOM is a live service, DDM is an optional market service. So from a delegated authority perspective, I think where we came to probably about 12 months ago was that we needed to go further in delegated authority, and particularly we needed to align it much closer with open market to get us towards that data first kind of output. And so yes, I suppose, would I say it's being deferred? No, I would probably challenge that. I think we are actually looking at DA with the kind of respect it needs, rather than just focusing on 2 systems. And you know, maybe that could be perceived as a negative, but I think the general perception is, okay, let's actually look at delegated authority. It's a really important business line for us from a Lloyd's perspective and a market perspective that maybe at times hasn't been given the love and attention it needs. So maybe we actually need to give it that way and not apologize for that fact. So hopefully that starts to answer it. I suppose from the user journey and kind of stories perspective, yes, technically there is some stuff out there, as you said, in the adoption guide that is applicable, but much of it will start at the broker or the carrier levels, because those are the interactors with central services. As we move towards phase 2, that will obviously then be expanded out further up the distribution chain. Hopefully that answers your question, Jonathan, but if there's any more specifics, I'm happy to discuss.
Okay, do we have any other questions in the room or questions online? Just give a minute or 2 for that. Just while we're waiting, Matt and Jamie, I don't know if you've got any final comments you wish to make, if there are no further questions.
Well, a couple of things. So just to reiterate, if you're connecting with central services and actually looking at the problem right now and don't feel like you're connected in, please reach out to Jamie and myself. We will either know the answer or we'll be able to get the answer for you. On the point of timescales, as I say, we've been really transparent in terms of looking at, like, should we extend that testing period? We'll confirm that over the next week, and you'll see that confirmation come through pretty quickly. But I would just say, so broadly on a firm by firm basis, phase 1 shouldn't impact, shouldn't create particular problems. It is more complex depending on what your particular infrastructure is. But we should all be completely clear that it's just such a massive step forward for the market to move this infrastructure away from old or outdated mainframe infrastructure, really bring us forward. And not only does that itself create a lot of value, what we can do with it going forward is what I think the really exciting stuff is. A completely new baseline that allows us to evolve the London market services digitally, which is a capability that we've just simply not had. So that's really exciting.
I think finally for me, as we look towards phase 2 for DA, we will engage with you. And I think one of the concerns we have consistently heard back by Tim and Julia and individual conversations is, we know your development timeline in the cover holder MGA space is a bit longer, because if we change a data standard, you can't change it in 6 months. It takes some time. We know that, and we will build that into any future development timeline. So there is no expectation that you will have a new data standard in April 2035. So please, if there is any further concerns, reach out to us, but we will work with you and want your feedback moving forward.
Great, thank you. Okay, that seems to be all the questions. Yeah, thanks for agreeing to come back in about 6 months' time. So
Yeah,
I'll touch on that would be great. Just to reiterate, any questions that you want me to pass on, do not hesitate to email me at tim.richards@mgaa.co.uk. So thanks so much, Matt and Jamie. Thanks everyone for joining us. Don't forget to provide your feedback and look out for forthcoming MGAA events. So on that note, I hope you all have a productive day. Thanks for joining us and see you all soon.